help take care of him alongside my supportive partner, but also not knowing how many days I would be stuck here if they didn't have the votes, and grappling with showing up for a vote in DC because so many lives were on the line in my district, but also worrying about the health and safety and well-being of my newborn. So you all know, if you have kids, it's a 24/7 job. You can't just choose to leave your newborn at home. And Sam and I made that venture here for the first time. This is our third time now this week, because our voices matter. It's unacceptable that leadership has been unwilling to pass our resolution to make sure that new parents have a voice here and they're not restricted from doing their job, and especially women. So want to thank all of my colleagues for standing together, and my Republican colleagues, especially Representative Luna, for being such a champion on this. You know, I think that it's a moment that is reflective of what can happen when we actually come together, get to know each other, and don't let leadership get in the way. I am stunned that Speaker Johnson canceled votes this week because of what we did today, and that he knows he only has 2 more days until our resolution will be pulled up. So he's canceling votes and looking for the next ways in which he's going to try to ensure that we don't get a vote on the House floor. This is overwhelmingly supported by both Republicans and Democrats, and by moms and dads, grandmas, grandpas, all of us coming together to make sure that we're supporting new parents. And so we'll keep this fight up, but we're also here today to talk about the SAVE Act, which I'm completely taken aback that they would move something forward that could disenfranchise millions of women. I'm one of the 20% of women who did not change my name after getting married, but most women do. And there have been times in my life where I would not have been able to prove that I was a citizen when going to vote. How many people here know where their birth certificate is? I know I don't. How many people here have an outdated passport? I just recently got mine updated a few years ago. But as a member of Congress, there have been many times in my life where I would not have been able to show up and actually prove that I was a citizen to vote. This is about disenfranchising not just women, but Americans across the country. So the SAVE Act, I know that they're going to continue to, this will come to the floor even though we killed the rule today, but it is absolutely problematic, and we'll stand together as women once again. Thank you so much. And with that, I will give this to Vice Chair Hillary Skolton, my co-parent.
Thank you so much, Brittany, and thank you so much, Chair Leisure Fernandez, for doing this press conference. Well, this was supposed to be a real banner week for House Republicans in taking back women's rights. They rolled into this week ready to put up barriers and obstacles to new moms in Congress, and wanted to pass the SAVE Act, which would create millions of disenfranchised women voters across the country. But it was a real mess around, find out situation for them when they came in touch with the Democratic Women's Caucus. At 90 members strong, we put up an incredible resistance. Not only our votes on the floor, but the organizing efforts of getting this message out to the public about how important proxy voting is and how disastrous the SAVE Act will be. You know, the Democratic Women's Caucus had a panel discussion about a month ago with secretaries of state from across the country talking about the detrimental impacts, and the message broke through. As I went back home to even conservative West Michigan, I had Republicans raising their hands at our town halls saying, what is happening with this SAVE Act? You have to stand up. You have to do something. You have to prevent this from becoming law. You know, everyone up here believes unequivocally that, of course, U.S. citizens should be the ones who are deciding our elections. That's not what this bill is about. Republicans are hiding behind the guise of needing to protect our election integrity when in fact they know full well that if this were the issue they wanted to address, there are myriad other ways that they could go about addressing the issue that they believe individuals are voting illegally in our elections, such as doubling down on prosecutions for individuals who violate this law, getting out public education on voting rights. But what they did instead was to target millions of women, veterans, senior citizens, but almost 70 million women across the country who would be impacted by this law. You know, in Michigan's 3rd Congressional District alone, almost 160,000 women would be impacted. I can tell you, as a busy working mom myself, I barely have time to make a dentist appointment for myself, let alone go and track down my original birth certificate and you know, get a legal change to be able to vote. This is not about election security. It's voter suppression, plain and simple. I stand with anyone, Republican, Democrat, or Independent, who believes that democracy works best when more voices are heard, not silenced. That's why we joined, united as a House today to defeat this disastrous rule, and will continue to stand up against these efforts to suppress women's voices at every single turn. I am now honored to turn it over to the Democratic Women's Caucus Policy Co-Chair, Sydney Kamlager-Dove.
Hello, and thank you. I want to first applaud Congresswoman Pedersen for showing up with baby Sam to do the work of the people and her constituents. I want to applaud her efforts and the efforts of Congresswoman Sarah Jacobs, who were leading in our caucus around this discharge petition. It was important that we defeat the rule. It is also important for me to state that while I am grateful that 9 Republicans joined, that the Republican co-sponsor of this discharge petition does not support paid family leave, unlike my Democratic colleagues. So I do think it is important that we share the entire truth. This is certainly about making sure that new mothers have the opportunity to do their jobs, which is representing constituents and being mothers. And it is also important that we still talk about issues that impact women and working families and push members in the Republican Party who want to do right by themselves to also think about expanding that to do right by other women. This is a Republican Party that does not care about women. This is a Republican Party that is inching towards a national abortion ban. This is a Republican Party that is supporting tax cuts for the richest of the rich and is preparing to cut Medicaid, Medicare, and Social Security, which will impact hundreds of thousands of women, women veterans, women seniors, women who are disabled. And this is a Republican Party that is gaslighting the American people by telling them that the SAVE Act is going to save them, and it is not. You have 69 million women who still have use their maiden names. That name does not correspond with what is on their birth certificate. And they are going to have challenges when they go to the ballot box to vote. And they are going to vote. They are going to want to vote because women show up to vote when their bodies are on the line, when their freedoms are on the line, when their rights are on the line, when the rights of their children and grandparents and grandchildren are on the line. And the Republican Party knows this. In local elections and state elections across this country, when Dobbs was on the ballot, when reproductive health care was on the ballot, when the rights of women that were being attacked, when those rights were on the ballot, women showed up. And Speaker Johnson knows this, and Trump knows this. They are hiding behind the notion that the SAVE Act will make will prohibit folks who are undocumented from voting. Well, newsflash, people, that's already the law. So let's talk about what it's really about. It's a 2025 version of a poll tax to suppress the vote so that they can continue to do their dirty deeds. And all of their dirty deeds include attacking, demonizing, belittling, shaming, oppressing, silencing, dividing women. And this caucus, through this vote today on the rule, showed that we will not be divided. We will stand united, and we will speak truth to power on all sides. Even when you want a co-sponsored discharge petition, we will still talk truth. We will still talk truth to power and stand up for all women. And I hope that the Republican Party takes note and sees that we are going to call their bluff time and time again. The Speaker does not have his conference in order. The Speaker does not have his conference in order. We do. I will now call up Equality Caucus Liaison, Congresswoman Julie Johnson.
Thank you all. You know, it's so amazing to be with such talented legislators here in the Women's Caucus, and it's such an honor to be here. You know, I'm Julie Johnson. I'm from Dallas, Texas, and Texas is the hardest state to vote in. We've been down this road before, trying to deny women and people the right to vote. But there's an expression in Texas, it keeps coming up for me up here in D.C. It's called all hat and no cattle. What does that mean? Well, it comes from the expression of people who like to play cowboy, and they wear a big old hat, and they might wear shiny boots, but they have no substantive essence to them at all behind it. Hence, they have no cattle. They don't know what they're doing. And that's kind of what Republicans are doing here with women. They like to say all the words, but when you look at their actions, there's nothing there. They like to say they're pro-family and they're pro-women, but their actions are to make it as hard as possible for women and families to be part of this legislative institution. When they say they're pro-family and pro-women, they make it very hard for women to earn an equal wage. When they say they're pro-family and pro-women, they're doing everything they can to take away our health care, cutting Medicaid, cutting Medicare, making insurance inaccessible, keeping women from making their own medical choices. They say we should have autonomy over our bodies when it comes to vaccines, but God forbid women have autonomy over their bodies when it comes to their own healthcare choices and reproductive health. And now they don't want women to be able to be members of Congress and exercise their full scope solely because they've chosen to have a family. That's not pro-family. That's not pro-women. It's all hat and no cattle. And you look at the SAVE Act. Women are disproportionately disadvantaged in the documentation provided, but also in the requirements to have to physically go in person to a election office that could be hours and hours away and certainly not open into the evening because you're working all day and you're at your carpool and you're picking up your kids, or even more so, you're a sandwich mom where you have elderly parents you're caring for and kids you're caring for and trying to work all at the same time. How the hell are you going to get to the election office by 5 p.m. to dig up that birth certificate that you can't find anyway? So the thing that's so disingenuous, and again, and why I say they're all hat and no cattle, is I offered some amendments to make this bill better. I offered an amendment to say, you know what? You can submit your documentation online. Outright rejected by the Republicans. If they're really concerned about your ability to prove who you are, why would they not make it as accessible and open as possible to prove who you are? They're making it as difficult as possible to prove who you are. The other thing is, in their bill, they offered that they have criminal penalties against somebody who registers somebody to vote who's not eligible. Well, what about criminal penalties for them denying the right to vote to eligible people? I offered that amendment, matching their criminal penalties, and they rejected that too. So they're more concerned about making sure people who are ineligible from voting than making sure the millions of women and the millions of people who are eligible to vote to be able to cast that vote. They could care more about the ineligible voters than they are for the sacred violent right of the eligible citizens of this country to cast their right to vote. They're willing to put on the 32 people that cast a vote inappropriately against the 20 million people that may not be able to. Their priorities are completely misplaced. I also had an amendment that said, well, okay, that legal person was denied their right to vote. How do they fix it? What do you do if you are denied the right to vote when you're a legal citizen of this country? I made a provision that says, okay, a district court has to have a hearing within a certain time period to give that voter the right to cure, the right to be able to cast their ballot. Republicans outright rejected that as well. So they're not concerned about people voting. They're not concerned about citizens being able to cast their legal ballot. They're not concerned about making it easy for women, families, people of color, those with disabilities, our veterans serving overseas. How is an 18-year-old child of a veteran serving in Europe going to go register to vote when they're legally entitled to? How's that going to happen? Basically, we're telling those families of our men and women in the military, we don't care if you can vote. You can certainly die for our country, but we don't care if you can vote. So the Republicans are completely disingenuous when it comes to protecting women, when it comes to protecting families, when it comes to protecting the right to vote. And again, I'll say my favorite Texas expression, they're all hat and no cattle. And now I'll call up the great Representative Jennifer McClellan.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, you got Texas and now you got Virginia. I stand here as the proud first Black woman representing Virginia in Congress. And I'm here to give you some historical context because in Virginia, we are steeped in history. We are the birthplace of American democracy, where the first representative government in the Western Hemisphere met in Jamestown in 1619. And the only people allowed to vote were white, land-owning men. Where a month later, the first recorded Africans arrived on our shores, including women who were traded as property. Where a few months later, they realized that if the colony was going to be permanent, they needed wives who were recruited but given no rights. They could not vote. They could not own property. And what property they came with became the property of their husbands. We are the birthplace of Thomas Jefferson, who at the the Continental Congress, in a committee with John Adams, 249 years ago yesterday, Abigail Adams implored them, remember the ladies, and be kinder to them than your ancestors, meaning give us some rights. They didn't listen. And Mr. Jefferson's declaration said that all men were created equal and endowed by their Creator with inalienable rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. He didn't mean me. He did not mean me or any of the women standing behind me. We are the birthplace of James Madison, the architect of the Virginia Plan that created the Constitution, a government by, of, and for the people. I spent a lot of time pondering what that meant as a child. It means that government reflects the perspective and therefore meets the needs of the people who participate. But for most of our history, until after the Civil War, the only people allowed to vote, hold office, and participate were white, land-owning men. The struggle of our country has been, how do we make the ideal upon which we were founded true for everybody. It's been fits and starts. It's been a long, bloody process. But in 1870, the formerly enslaved black men were granted the right to vote, only to have it stripped away when Reconstruction ended, and a wave of voter suppression constitutions across the South put poll taxes and literacy tests in place. Women gained the right to vote in 1920, but those same poll taxes and literacy tests kept them from voting if they were black until the Civil Rights Act, when we finally began to make progress. Along the way, in the midst of World War II, we said, if you are dying for your country, you should be able to vote for your commander-in-chief. So we allowed service members to register and vote by mail. All of that is under attack in the SAVE Act. The SAVE Act is a poll tax. Just like the poll tax my father paid in 1947 in Nashville, Tennessee, the receipt he kept in his Bible, and that is the Bible I took my oath of office on. You may ask, well, how is the SAVE Act a poll tax? Because the only forms of ID permissible to prove your citizenship cost money. Here's a list. Real ID, $42. Passport, $130. While a military ID is free if it's issued, if you don't register in person under the SAVE Act, you're out of luck. Birth certificate from a state agency, a certified copy in Virginia, that's $12. A consular report of birth abroad, $100. A certificate of citizenship, $1,385. Whether it's the roughly $2 that my father paid in 1947 or $1,385, 1 cent is too much. It's a poll tax, which is illegal under the 24th Amendment. And as you've already heard, for women who have changed their name, maybe if you bring your entire chain of custody of documents to prove what the changes your name went through, maybe you'll get the right to vote. But we have come too far to go back. Because in a democracy by, of, and for the people, every time we have made progress in reaching the goal, the ideal upon which we were founded, there's a backlash that involves propaganda, non-citizens voting in elections, even though there's no proof in large numbers. It involves violence and insurrection on the Capitol when you didn't win at the ballot box, and voter suppression. This is the mother of all voter suppression. This is the 2025 poll tax. This is Jim Crow 2.0 that tells women, that tells low-income people, that tells the disabled, that tells our veterans, that tells the homebound seniors, you cannot participate. You are not among we the people. And that's why we voted no. And I'd now like to turn this over to DWC Member Rep Maxine Dexter.
Thank you so much. What an honor to be here with these fierce women. And our representative who's going to follow me did a lot of the hard work to make sure we got here today to celebrate shutting down this rule. So I'm Congresswoman Maxine Dexter, Oregon's 3rd Congressional District. I'm a mother, I'm a physician, and I'm a lawmaker. And today, House Republican leadership tried to silence new moms and dads in Congress, but we refused to let them. Instead, Representative Pedersen's resolution to allow parents to vote by proxy, something that I know as a mother is absolutely essential for working parents, moved one step closer to becoming a reality. This is a win for democracy and for families everywhere. But make no mistake, House Republicans will not let up on their attack on women everywhere. I have no doubt that they will still push for the SAVE Act, their attack on women. It's an anti-woman voter suppression bill. Today, I introduced an amendment that would have stopped this bill from being implemented unless we could just certify that no eligible married woman would be denied the right to vote. That should go without saying. Republicans blocked it. Let me repeat that. Republicans voted down my amendment that just would have ensured that women who are eligible and registered could still cast their ballot. This puts up to 70 million women at risk of disenfranchisement. 70 million. That's 1 in 4 voters in this country. And the burden will fall hardest on working mothers, caregivers, those juggling jobs and families who have barely a moment to spare. It's outrageous that in the year 2025, more than a century after the 19th Amendment was ratified, we still have to defend a woman's right to vote. But we will, every single day, if that's what it takes, because this is personal. It's for the mom in Gresham who can't afford to take unpaid time off work to go hunt down paperwork. It's for the woman in Hood River whose name no longer matches her birth certificate, who doesn't have the $160 for a passport. Are we really going to tell her she can't vote? Republicans failed to show up for their mothers, their daughters, their wives, and every woman in their life. But we are going to keep showing up, and we're just getting started. We're not going to stop until we build a government where working mothers and families can also thrive. And now I'm going to hand it over to Sarah Jacobs, who did much of the hard work today.
Thank you. Well, hi, everybody. And thank you to DWC for all of your support. I'm really proud of the strong bipartisan coalition that we built to support new parents. We were able to outmaneuver Speaker Johnson and all of his shady tactics, the strong-arming, the coercion, the extortion, the pressure, and the threats. And that's because 222 of us know that the status quo isn't working. And in large part, that's both because of who has been allowed to vote, as we've heard, and because who has been able to serve here. The median age of the House is 57 and a half years old. But the median age of the United States is 20 years younger. In fact, this is the 3rd oldest Congress in history. And the House is only 29% women. This place doesn't work for younger people, it doesn't support families, and it doesn't welcome women. This needs to change, and we have a bipartisan proposal to do it. That bipartisan resolution that I co-led alongside Congresswoman Anna Paulina Luna, Congresswoman Brittany Pedersen, and Congressman Mike Lawler would give members of Congress who've given birth or whose spouse have 12 weeks of proxy voting. Pretty simple, pretty clear. Our discharge petition was only the 5th successful one to get to 218 signatures this century, and we were the fastest ever to do so. So we shouldn't complicate this and make this resolution into something that it's not. This boils down to making this body more representative of the American people. It's about making it possible for families and young people to serve. And it's about not perpetuating the status quo just because this is how it's always been done. We're one step closer to getting this done. We know that they're going to continue throwing everything they can at this, but I'm confident we'll be able to beat whatever they throw our way, and I'm looking forward to getting this done next week. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Sarah. Representative, so that's it for our speakers. I didn't know if there were any questions.
If I'm not mistaken, no House Republican women joined Congresswoman Luna in supporting, in taking down the rule. What does it say that the Democratic Women's Caucus has been on the front lines of this fighting this to say that Congresswoman Jacobs, she just spoke about the advocacy and the work that you've done on the discharge petition. What's your reaction? What are your thoughts on the fact that Congresswoman Luna was the only House Republican woman to support this, to support taking down the rule this afternoon?
Why don't you speak?
Yeah. Look, I think it goes to show that this actually, while it is important to have more women, is actually about families, right? Because a lot of the men who voted with us voted because they have young children and they weren't able to be home with their children in those really important early weeks. And so, we talk about this as a women's issue because it is, but actually it's a whole family issue.
I'd also point out that when we passed the Fairness Protection Act, which would ensure that women receive equal pay for equal work, we did not get a single Republican woman on that bill. So we are hopeful that over time we will get more women from both sides of the aisle supporting these policies, which, as Representative Jacobs pointed out, are not women's issues, they are family issues, they are American issues.
Yes. So many Republicans have said that married women can vote, and that they accuse Democrats of fear-mongering. What's your response to that?
So we've just heard women will have a harder time registering if they changed their name when they got married, period. So to deny that existence is to deny the bill that they just wrote. We proposed amendments to the SAVE Act that would have made it easier for women who changed their name to vote. I proposed an amendment last night that would allow a woman who was married and had changed her name to attest under penalty of perjury. When you attest to something, it's under penalty of perjury that you change your name and you are the person you are, you were born here. They refused that. So the fact of the matter is that their bill erects barriers to women registering the vote. And as we heard earlier today, each of these pieces of paper that you need to take off work to go get cost money. Each of those pieces of paper costs time. Each of those pieces of paper take you away from your own work, your own family obligations, your own free time. So it is not honest to say that this bill does not impact women. It absolutely does, which is why you're seeing women all over the country who can pull it open, look it up, and say it's a problem. And it is why you see in New Hampshire election officers actually saying it's disenfranchisement. So this is the great thing about New Hampshire. It's a real life example of what happens.
The Majority Leader Scalise has said that he's going to try to bring up the rule that just was voted down again next week to try to pass the SAVE Act. What does it say to you both that, proxy voting is the thing that House Republican leaders have gone to such lengths to the point of derailing their own legislative calendar over, and how do you both plan to build on the momentum of today's vote when the SAVE Act does eventually come up in whatever form and under whatever rule it comes up again in?
And I think I'd love to hear from Representative Jacobs on this, because they don't need a rule for the SAVE Act, right? So they are just, it is, as I called earlier, what we call in New Mexico, movida. It's just a move to try to get Republicans to stay united, because all Republicans, for some reason, don't really want women to have easy access to ballots. So they're united on that. But I'll let Representative Jacobs speak to that.
So as Chair Leger-Fernandez said, the SAVE Act was already included in the rules package that first passed the House on January 3rd. So there's no need to have another rule to bring the SAVE Act to vote. So this is a cynical ploy on behalf of Republican leadership to try and coerce their members into not supporting this. But as we saw today, we have a very strong bipartisan coalition, and we will continue having the votes to be able to kill whatever it is that they throw our way. And, I think it's pretty ridiculous that they're willing to undermine their own agenda because they are so mad at allowing young parents, to be able to vote by proxy. It's not like, I wish we were at a place where you had like 230 members who were having kids and couldn't get here, right? But we've had 13 women ever give birth in Congress, right? So we are talking about a very small subset of Congress, and this is a very easy, concrete step. It's not like you can fake having a baby, right? Like, all of their reasons to be against proxy voting don't make sense when it comes to this bill.
It's also hypocritical. Speaker Johnson.
Oh, yeah, actually, I have that all written
Yeah,
here.
Speaker Johnson voted 39 times. Oh, I like that, right?
Yeah.
We're a chorus about the hypocrisy, right? We could do a doo-wop.
Yeah.
Speaker Johnson voted 39 times, and as far as I know, it wasn't because he had a newborn. There might have been other very legitimate reasons he had the right to do that. We also have a member of Congress who this Congress essentially voted by proxy in order to participate in a Hollywood comedy news show, and that has not been punished. So it's hypocritical when they are against, one member. Right now, they will have a member who this would apply to. We might have a member in the future who this would apply. It's going to be Very, very few. We don't understand it because if you want to say you're for family values, support the ability of families in Congress to vote and to participate. There was one more, I think. Did I see another hand? No? Okay, well, thank you so very much for coming and participating.